Welcome. I'm Sarah Newman of the Climate Mental Health Network. I'm in Washington, D.C. And we are going to have an Instagram Live in just a minute with Leslie Davenport. Hi, Rachel.
Oh, good morning or afternoon.
I'm just looking for Leslie. Leslie, if you can see us, you need, let's see. Okay.
Let's see. I'm trying to set this up well. Never done live before.
Oh, okay. Here's Leslie. Yay, that was easy.
Hi.
Welcome. Can you guys hear? I'm leaning on my computer and the computer fan's going. Can you hear that sound or no?
Seems fine to me.
Slightly, but it's I
Okay. Anyway, okay, welcome to everyone who is going to be joining us. We're starting a couple minutes early. But maybe we could just briefly start with introductions. Rachel, do you want to start us?
Yeah, sure. My name's Rachel. I'm from Los Angeles, currently living up in Humboldt on Wiyot land. I'm a graduate student at Cal Poly Humboldt and also an intern for the Climate Mental Health Network.
Awesome. And Leslie?
Yeah. Hi, everyone. My name's Leslie Davenport, pronouns she, her. I'm currently in Tacoma, Washington on the Salish Puyallup tribal land. And I work as a climate psychology consultant and am an advisor with Climate Mental Health Network.
I'm so excited to be in conversation with both of you today. And welcome to people as we're coming into the chat, to the live. Please feel free to put comments, questions in the chat. And what we're talking about today is a new study that was published in The Lancet exactly 1 week ago. And it was a study of 16,000 Gen Zers across the United States, every state plus Washington, D.C., where I live. And some of the key findings of the study, I'm just going to go through a few of them. One is that 85% of these Gen Zers are worried about climate change. By political affiliation, it was 92% of Democrats, 86% of independents or other, and 74% of Republicans. And also of note is that more than half of the respondents indicated that climate change is causing them to question whether the work they put into their education or career, job, or vocation will matter. And the majority are also hesitant to have children. That was 52.3%. Also of note is 2/3 of the respondents want their parents' or grandparents' generations to try to understand their feelings, and more than 70% wanted others to talk about climate-related feelings. And then last is that more than 2/3 endorsed being likely to decrease their own or their family's contribution to climate change, wanting families to take action to address climate change. That was 68%. And then last is more than half of the respondents indicated that climate change is causing them to question whether, I'm sorry, I did that one. That was about to have children. So there's a lot to talk about here in terms of means for Gen Zers, Gen Zers who are parents now, Gen Zers who are choosing not to be parents, and for people who are parents. And Leslie is a prolific writer of books for parents and for children about climate emotions. Rachel has been working on the Climate Mental Health Network's parents research, and is a youth leader. So it's just really, I'm excited for this conversation. And the first thing I wanted to just ask both of you is, I guess it's hard to hear me. Is this better?
Yeah, I don't know if you're hearing it. It's like it sounds like a hose.
Sorry. Okay. I will move this away. Is that better?
Yes.
That is better.
Okay. Sorry, everyone. My first question is, what are both of your thoughts about the findings that 85% of all Gen Zers are worried about climate change?
Mm-hmm. Um, Leslie, do you want to go first? Happy to go first.
Um, sure, I'm happy to start out. Well, I guess I have more feelings than thoughts, honestly. As much as this isn't too surprising, this is something I see and hear and witness quite a bit. To see it confirmed in such stark terms is really heartbreaking and outraging. And to know that part of what this is pointing out is not only is this generation facing the future and all the feelings that come up and the decisions that need to be made, but that they're not recognized and that there exists this gap, which is really what came across so strongly to me, which amplifies all these feelings and the sense of urgency potentially and can go many places, like the sense of despair that could come from that. And I just recognize that how different it is from when I was that age, where my glance into the future did not include these issues, which now cannot be ignored, and in fact are hijacking a lot of the decisions and considerations that have to be made.
Mhm. Yeah, I feel similarly. I mean, my first reaction is definitely just a feeling of deep sadness for everything that young people are carrying and witnessing and experiencing and having to for in this world. I think though, seeing that like majority number of 85%, there is a sense of relief there in a way that like we so many young people are feeling the same way. So there's a sense of camaraderie and connectedness and like we are not alone in this. And that feels very hopeful. And also seeing studies like this, knowing that like what we've been feeling and experiencing is now more, there's more awareness and more public visibility around
Mhm.
that, feels good in a way. And I think, yeah, this is something a lot of us have been caring for a long time. I know like I was experiencing climate anxiety as young as 8 years old, and I know a lot of my friends are as well. So um I think, yeah, there was this feeling too of almost like gratitude that okay, finally like it's being put into these numbers that maybe will
Mhm.
pull up a little bit to this issue. And just one thing I think about too is just like all the stories behind those numbers also, and how like unique everyone's experiences are of this, and how like complex anxiety is too, and all the other emotions that are tangled up with that as well. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think this is the third of our Instagram live series about the study, and um, everyone keeps talking about how the data is putting numbers to people's stories, and what I really hope is that the stories behind the numbers, those are that they become prolific, that everyone is sharing their stories, that the 16,000 Gen Zers who are in the survey, that all of their stories are heard, and obviously millions more. And, just that, to Rachel, to your point of what so many young people say, that this is so validating in terms of what they're going through. Um, so one of the other questions I have is in this Lancet survey, 70% of those surveys said they want to talk about their climate feelings, including two-thirds want older generations to understand what they're going through. How do you each think parents, grandparents, caregivers can be more helpful and supportive with young people about their climate emotions?
I could start this one. Um, so yeah, I think intergenerational climate conversations are so important. And I think just parents, grandparents, caregivers, you know, becoming aware of the issues, really doing their own learning and processing of this information, and also not being afraid to share their own feelings
Yeah.
with the children and young people in their life. Because I think often there's a fear maybe of like overwhelming children or making them more scared by sharing that you're scared too. But it's like young people are already feeling this fear and anxiety. So sharing your own fears and anxiety, I think, just leads to more connection, um, with the young people in your life. And then, you can go on this really like beautiful journey together of curiosity and looking into, okay, we are feeling these things, we know these things, like, what do we do together now? And I think it's okay too to not know everything about climate change, right? To not like 100% know the ins and outs of climate change, to be there as a support for the young people in your life. I think that's really important. Like, we never have to 100% be an expert on something to connect and share an experience with others.
Yeah, Rachel, that was so beautifully expressed, and I agree with absolutely everything that you shared. And I do think, as you've said, that sometimes parents or grandparents are hesitant. There's this deep sense of wanting to protect, keep things safe, but it doesn't actually do that to close the door to these conversations and to be authentic around the feelings. I have a feeling that whatever we talk about today, it's all going to be about connecting and relational learning and acknowledging overtly being in it together with everything from solutions to the human felt experience of it all. And that everybody can find multiple forms of support too, like with each other. I'm thinking of organizations too, like Third Act, the Bill McKibben 350.org, that is rallying elders to be more involved, and then all the youth organizations like Sunrise and others, and how the reaching out and building bridges and sharing resources and sharing perspectives is, I think, what we're talking about, and also where we're headed here. And honestly, Sarah, maybe you can say something about this. I really think Climate Mental Health Network is a really great model for building a lot of these cross-generational bridges between the different advisory councils you have, and then events like this where voices are coming together.
Yeah, thank you for that, Leslie. I do want to say that we did have earlier this year a conversation that was hosted with Co-Generate and Third Act that was about navigating climate emotions through intergenerational connections. And there's a recording on our website. And that was just really, really powerful event to hear from people. The youngest person had just graduated from high school and is 18, and the oldest participant is 80. And just this, as you said, Leslie, like deep connections and sharing, and also, the research shows that people of different generations really want to be connecting. And also on the Climate Mental Health website, we have some free resources for parents that are available in English and Spanish, for parents and caregivers to be able to talk to young people about climate emotions, and also for their own self-care. But the last thing, Leslie, that you're highlighting is that Climate Mental Health Network is intergenerational in our work. And I'm Gen X, and I'm so grateful to be able to work with Gen Z advisors, Gen Z staff, people of all generations to do this work, because we really can't do it siloed by age or anything else. And so having those intergenerational connections really helps me grow and do the work better. So
Yes. And just to add to that, there are bright, inspired, smart, climate aware leaders in every generation.
Yeah.
right? And so it is kind of mapping this together in coming together.
Mhm.
Yeah. And I think also just to highlight that is that, often you'll hear comments like it's up to young people to save us, or the sense of that they need to solve the climate crisis and that everyone else has failed, as opposed to no, they're stepping into a movement with many
Mm-hmm.
people, different generations, and it's not up to any one age group to solve this, and that there's opportunities for young leadership, but it's also opportunities for them to learn from others of different generations who've been doing this work for however long, decades, perhaps longer than some of them have been alive. And also
Yes.
there's for those older generations to be learning from young leaders. It's really, I think that this kind of separating people is not benefiting anyone.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And I just also want to thank everyone who's joining us. And if you have any questions or comments, please feel free to put them in the chat. One question I have is that the majority of new births in the United States is it's Gen Z parents. This is according to the CDC. So how could we understand the special needs of Gen Z parents given the climate crisis?
Hmm. Hmm. Leslie, do you want to?
Sure, I'll start. Again, every question kind of starts with this emotional, like, bam, because it's so challenging. I mean, to me, this is really bringing together a couple of the most difficult things to reconcile. So, as a new parent, there's this yearning, again, to protect, to support, to give our children the best possible life, the best possible future, with this heightened awareness of the challenges that we're in. And I think it just increases everything we've been talking about to have those two coexisting. And I do think that this is an area where kind of coming together with other parents is so helpful, because it's not just hearing each other out, each person out and being validated for what they're experiencing, but also the sharing of resources and networks and things like that. I'm aware of a couple of very good parenting groups like this through the Good Grief Network that I've heard such wonderful things about. So that would be another resource to consider.
Mhm. Yeah, and I think what I heard in your response is this big focus on collective care, right? I think self-care is something that is thrown around a lot, and that's really important. But I think what's missing sometimes is that we really need each other, and self-care can look like being in community,
Mhm.
and supporting each other. And I also in this question think of like how expansive climate care can look like. Like we know climate is connected to so many other things. So, healthcare, childcare, like all these aspects, like voting for leaders that support these things, reproductive care, like all of this, I think, um, is intimately tied in with this issue, and that Gen Z are really aware of these interconnections and want and need this holistic kind of support.
Mhm.
So on the inverse of this, so we were talking about Gen Zers having babies, that this is, the new demographic of parents. But then the inverse is from the survey, which found that it was the majority of Gen Zers surveyed were hesitant to have children. I think it was 52.8%, if I'm not mistaken. And so how do you respond? How do you respond to that? That 52.3% of the Gen Z are surveyed are hesitant to have children.
Hmm. I think it makes a lot of sense. Like this is, I know, a conversation and struggle that I've had in my own life. I'm 27 now. Um, I think when I was a little younger, I was really caught up in this like doom and gloom narrative. I think in part because how we're taught about climate change in school in particular um, feels very apocalyptic and like humanity is doomed and that it's perhaps selfish to bring people into this world when like it's hard to even support ourselves and live full happy lives. So I think that line of thinking makes absolute sense. And also it really saddens me that, you know, if people want children and want to have this beautiful human experience, I also don't think like, you know, denying our own desires is necessarily the answer. I think everything should be done in a mindful, conscious way. But I think recognizing too that like we can create a more beautiful future world, and part of that is continuing this human experience of having children, and it can be an act of survival and resistance as well that many peoples have done for millennium. And but I will say like I deeply em- empathize with that, and for a long time I also was very much in the mindset of I can't bring children into this world. I think engaging with Britt Ray's work, Generation Dread, um, really helped me in navigating some of those feelings. So I think that's a really good resource I'll put out there.
Yes, thank you. I don't have a lot to add. I was going to mention Britt Ray too, because she also shares her personal story about deciding to have a child, is published in quite a few places. And another resource just to look at is Jade Sasser's work. But with all of that being said, I do think it is a very personal decision because you can do research and read statistics about carbon contributions and see things falling on both sides depending on a range of variables. And people who say it's selfish to have kids and people who say it's selfish not to have kids. And and that I think, as you said, Rachel, it has to be a really mindful, deep inquiry around that, which can be done in community. And also, you know, there is a place at times for more individual support. And I just want to mention that some of you may know that the mental health field overall does not require any training in climate aware issues. But there are ways to seek out therapists who are climate informed. And the Climate Psychology Alliance provides a nationwide directory. And there's also an international one, Climate Psychology Alliance, based in the UK, where if you wanted a place to safely open this up without judgment, there are ways to do that as well.
And thanks to both of you for highlighting all the groups that we collaborate with and partner with, and also the books. And Jade Sasser and Britt Ray's books, you can find them on we have a page on bookshop.org. So if you wanted to support a local bookseller, and we get a small percentage of the sales, Jade Sasser's book is called Climate Anxiety and the Kid Question, and Britt Ray's book is called Generation Dread. So as a last question for both of you, what might it look like? You know, in the survey, one of the top responses was that young people want their families to take action to reduce their contribution to climate change. And this, you know, was, I think, it was one of the top responses, and way above things like, I want to join a local group to take action, things like that. So what might it look like for families to respond to the climate crisis in their homes in terms of reducing their contributions, carbon emissions, and so forth. What might this look like? And how does this, how can we look at this? You know, there's often these conversations about collective action and systems change, and this is really honing in on, you know, something that's very more individualistic or, you know, smaller level in terms of doing it in a home. And how do you think that we can see that as how that helps to build out those broader community connections that we're talking about?
Mhm. Mhm. Well, I mean, besides there being a benefit from the actual reduction in, let's say, carbon emissions, there's also the benefit of the coming together. You know, we're talking about the importance of conversation and hearing each other out and validating the feelings and opening all that up. But to have all of that understanding then move into this cohesive action is also going to lift off some of the distress around the lack of that we started out talking about, which is energizing. And that anytime something like that happens, it really can be a model and inspiration for others. Um, so I don't think that it would remain necessarily limited to the family, but I know even from my energy companies, I'm always getting this, how much energy are you using compared to your neighbor kind of stuff. And there is something about not to do it in a shaming way, but in an inspiring way, like, look what's possible and look what we're doing too. And this is how you compost food waste or whatever those elements are that it's going to look like. I think the strength is the ways that it ripples out, elevates, and collectively can inspire things to happen on a larger scale, have benefits on a larger scale.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think practicing anything as on a small scale, and it's rehearsing for something bigger, but it's also really valuable and important on our own, and those decisions within the household or whatnot really shift and align our values, and that way we're able to like take that energy out into, you know, other spheres. And I think one way that families can take concrete tangible action in this is maybe sit down as a group, and, you know, write a plan together, or like brainstorm all the ways that you're able to make changes in a household. And these don't have to be massive things. Like, I'm not a parent, but I have parents, and I know parenting is incredibly exhausting, and you don't necessarily want to add extra um, to your plate. But I think looking at what is already happening and how we can just shift the way things are being done and create a new routine that is not necessarily adding more burden, um, is really important. And then, you know, this can be like something that maybe once a month you sit down together and like reflect on the changes and how it's affected the way you're relating to your house and each other. And I think that can be something really positive too, and create, like you're saying, Leslie, like more connection and family resiliency. And then those good emotions that these actions are causing then make it so you're able to go out into the wider world.
That's a perfect way to end. But before we conclude, I wanted to just ask both of you to share about any resources. And Leslie, of course, please share about your books. And Leslie's books are also available on our bookshop page. So find our bookshop page if you go to our website, climatementalhealth.net/books, and then there'll be a link to that page so you can buy Leslie's fantastic books there. So definitely invite both of you to please share about any resources that would be helpful to people who are either joining us live or who are going to be watching this later.
I'll just share that probably the easiest way to see what I do and what I can offer is through my website, which is my name, lesliedavenport.com. Because as a consultant, I really go in a lot of directions, training the mental health field in the climate aware issues and working with schools to bring these emotional supports into the climate sciences and organizations and so forth. But I guess I just want to add on to that, it really is an invitation to be bold, to be creative, to try things out, that I'm sharing resources, but all of it is really a kind of being invented together, that this is a very much an emerging field, and it kind of goes back to what all of us can contribute to that.
Mhm. Yeah. Yes to all of that. I'm also going to quickly pull a book to share. This has been one of my favorite resources from Atmos magazine. It's called The Overview: Meditations on Nature for a World in Transition, and full of just beautiful, like, poetic narratives and images. And my little shout out to just how important art and artists is to all of this as well.
Beautiful.
Yes. And Rachel has led for us internally at Climate Mental Health. Some amazing art activities have been really wonderful. And I'll just say that in addition to the parent resources that we have on our website, we also have something called the Climate Emotions Wheel. It's available in over 30 languages, but there's also an emojis version, which is really great for young kids to use, but it's obviously for people of all ages. And then also on our website, we have some self-care tips and some worksheets, including worksheets for taking action and self-care that could be done as a family. And also, just to Leslie's point, that everything that we're doing in the space that we're co-creating this together, Leslie and Rachel have been invaluable collaborators in our work, and some of the people joining us today have also been incredible collaborators, and that this is really, there's so much to do, so much work that we can be doing, but we've done so much, and it's just really, I find it really inspiring and invigorating to be able to just continue to be doing this work with people who care so deeply about what's happening with young people and about future generations, and just this realization that we're all in this together.
Yeah.
So thank you both so much for being here, and thank you to everyone who joined us live and for everyone who's going to be watching us later. Really appreciate everyone being part of this conversation. So take care, everyone.
Right.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye.